He knows that he shouldn't feel guilty. Mr. Kim, here's who should. And yet, Jungkook somehow feels like he's the only one of them two who thinks that what's going on is completely wrong. A little while later, when Mi is already leaving for work and the economics is making his head spin, Jungkook is reaching for his brand new smartphone. Go to hell, Mr. Kim Taehyung and his gifts, and can't keep his hands still, deciding to Google. He's sure he'll find at least some information to appease his curiosity. And it actually turns out to be easier than he expected. Whether it's because the internet is such a great thing, or because Mr. Kim is a much bigger figure than he seemed, but by Googling Mr. Kim Taehyung, Jungkook gets dozens of results in the search engine. The first link that comes up is the Kim development website, which, according to the World Web, is headed by Mr. Kim. Jungkook bites his lip as he reads the site's content and opens the company's history section. To his surprise, the company itself has been around for a long time, and it was previously headed by Mr. Kim, apparently, Mr. Kim's father. But Kim Taehyung himself, being fresh blood in the world of real estate, as the old article calls him, took the place in the company back in 2009, when he was only 24. Wow! And Jungkook was about 7 at the time. Amazing. Leaving the company's website and surfing through other tabs, Jungkook also comes across information about Mr. Kim's personal life. And everything is pretty smooth, almost polished, marrying the daughter of the former ambassador of South Korea, a magnificent wedding with a bunch of famous people among the guests, from businessmen to politicians, a marriage with benefits and a bright future, as one of the articles dubbed it. Jungkook even finds a Vogue cover from 2011, for which the newly married Mr. and Mrs. Kim were shot and interviewed. He looks at the photo of a slightly younger Mr. Kim looking back at him, and suddenly notices that the man aged phenomenally. Like fine wine, or whatever they usually say. What he actually can't say about his wife, because, surprisingly, she seems to have not changed at all in 10 years. Oh, damn. 10 years. Mr. Kim has been married for 10 years. Bloody hell? His wife's name is Taisha. Jungkook finally finds out when he opens the article. Brilliant reputation, an Ivy League law school degree, prominent parents and a husband with a large family business. That's who Kim Taisha is? Well, he didn't expect anything less. Previously, it seemed to Jungkook that such people live in some other world that does not intersect with his world at all. But today he has already managed to find out the opposite, and now he really lies on his bed and continues to read about the wife of his boss. It's weird to even think about. An interview with Mr. Kim, details of their wedding, a couple of photos. Jungkook skims it over rather quickly, realizing that this is 10 years old, but he's curious to know what's going on now. So he Googles not the name of his boss, but the name of his boss's wife. And this does not go in vain. Because if in Vogue interview in 2011 she was just the wife of a young and promising heir Taehyung, here in 2021 Kim Taehyung is the owner of the chain of successful law firms. Having started her business with the support of her husband when she was only 23, after so many years she is successfully afloat and creates good competition in law field, and her fortune is now quite a bit inferior to that of her husband, if Jian believes the internet. He reads her recent interview for some business publication, where in conclusion this woman and her husband are called one of the strongest love unions in business in recent years, and he feels a lump rise in his throat. Jungkook locks the phone, tossing it on the bed as he goes through the photos at the end of the interview, from where Mrs. Kim's confident and piercing gaze seems to be fixed right on him. The boy agrees with his own thoughts that he can no longer do this. Not now, when he knows the truth. When he knows that this man has a family. Jungkook decides he will end things with Mr. Kim no matter what. He doesn't care about the money, doesn't care even if Mr. Kim fires him. The whole thing between them is wrong and Jungkook won't do this again with a married man. Jungkook's day gets off to a terrible start in the morning. First, Moss, the funky goat, locks himself in the bathroom because he's sick from the hangover, and therefore, already decently late. Jungkook doesn't even have time to take a shower, but only quickly washes his face and brushes teeth. And then he sees Yeonjun finishing off what Jungkook had on his shelf in the fridge, and that's how the boy leaves the flat without breakfast. Jungkook is going to the university quickly, hoping that he hasn't forgotten anything. In general, the misfortunes could have ended there, but when the boy runs to the subway, a car flies by a few steps before the desired destination, and that's how Jungkook ends with his jeans and sneakers soaking wet and soiled in the mud and melted snow. Jungkook really wants to whine at yet another realization of what a terrible life he has, but he is already too late to allow himself such a luxury. Crowd on the subway, because it's a rush hour. Pathetic attempts to repeat the things that he crammed last night, and Jungkook finally gets to the university. But when he finds out that his project partner didn't show up, that's the moment when Jungkook runs to the restrooms, locks himself in a cubicle, throwing his backpack on the floor, and then sits down on the closed toilet lid and just starts to sob. Jungkook cries for 10 minutes or more, sniffing loudly and wiping his wet cheeks with the rough sleeves of his old jacket until there are no more tears left in his eyes. He wants to eat, he wants to take a shower to feel better. He wants to never go back to his miserable, worthless shack. He wants to never again undress for money. He just wants to stop being himself. And then a phone, given by Mr. Kim, which Jungkook is still embarrassed about, because he accepted this gift, is heard by the sound of a message from somewhere in his jacket pocket. The boy wipes his wet nose with the back of his hand, and then, biting his lip at the urge to continue crying that still churns inside, he unlocks the phone and looks at the notification. Mr. Kim, I'm going to give you a present tonight, baby. So make sure you don't take any privates. I might be a little late for the opening hour. Jungkook sobs loudly, grimacing as he starts crying again, and angrily locks the phone without answering. He hates his life. Jungkook is not surprised when his failures continue even after the end of the classes. He goes back to work as a babysitter, but today is definitely not his day, because the baby is naughty and cries now and then, and Jungkook has to somehow hold on so as not to cry along. But luckily, when he arrives at the moth, even having time to get home to take a shower, and doesn't get hit by a bus or fall onto the subway rails, Jungkook still considers it a small victory. After all, it's been a whole day of such events, and he was sure that the culmination of everything that was happening was waiting for him. Something so negative and bad that he would have a reason to smoke. Or even ask me to help him to snip a line. Anything to stop feeling, even for a few seconds. Jungkook walks into the dressing room, quietly greeting everyone, and gets a response from about half of those present. Everything is more complicated when your colleagues think that you are getting laid by the boss. Because Jungkook thinks he needs to remind himself that these girls and guys here are not his friends at all. And to remember the times when he was the new boy, Jungkook will not dare even for the money. Because if anyone, including himself, thought that the most fierce competition is in the modeling business, Jungkook found out the opposite when he came to work here. At the very least, the stories about shattered glass in shoes and torn costumes turned out to be brutal truths that Jungkook, who was quite young and scared at that time, hardly knew how to deal with. So he does the usual thing, changes clothes, waits for Andy to call him on stage. Jungkook will smile, ignoring the lump in his throat, and he'll bite his lip, winking again when he'll see one of the guests. He will clench his jaw, and, swallowing nervously, Jungkook will walk away. Same old shit but a different night. The smile fades from his face, replaced by disgust. As soon as the boy finds himself in a dark hall, now all he wants to do is get all the dirty money, drink a couple cups of water, and take a pill for his head. He seems to have cried too much today. With that in mind, Jungkook heads towards the dressing rooms as the muted bass continues to fill the hall, causing him to feel a painful throb in his temples. But when someone's strong arms intercept him in the dark corridor, Jungkook barely has time to understand anything, and one of the hands covers his mouth. He tries to scream, tries to break out of the grip of the strangers and sees almost nothing while trying to resist for a good few moments, because of which his heart begins to beat faster in his chest, until he is suddenly pushed into the room, and a door immediately slams behind him. Hey! Hey! What the hell? Jungkook yells as he runs to the door and yanks on the handle, but it's locked. Let me out! The boy hits the wooden surface, hissing from the impact, and his soft voice treacherously settles.